So Attorney Capozzolo, we're going to go ahead and we're going to show some of those pictures, because the pictures that have been dropped show Jeffrey Epstein with very well-known people. So I want to go ahead and see those. Here he is with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is a political strategist, very active in President Trump's first presidential campaign, and also a former investment banker. Obviously, the two of them talking in what appears to be Jeffrey Epstein's office. And there's some picture there on the desk, which some news sources are saying the picture on the desk shows what appears to be a young woman who's passed out on the floor, and her face is covered up. They've blocked out her face. But anyway, that's on Epstein's desk. Let's go to some of the other pictures here, Eric. Here we've got him with the lower right, the man with the blonde hair there is Richard Branson, a billionaire investor. He also started Virgin Atlantic Airlines, in addition to many other businesses. Eric, let's go to another picture. Here we have him with former President Bill Clinton. We have seen some of these pictures here before. Bill Clinton has never been accused of anything, and he has never been charged with anything related to Jeffrey Epstein. He has also denounced any type of contact that he has had with him, and said that he severed contact and it was strictly business. Let's go to some other pictures, please, Eric. Here he is talking to attorney Alan Dershowitz. Let's go to another one, a well-known attorney. Here he is with Bill Gates. And I'm sorry, that's it's Bill Gates on the right in the gray sweater, and then that is Jeffrey Epstein's pilot for his private jet. And that pilot would fly people for business purposes and otherwise to Jeffrey Epstein's private island. Let's go to another picture. Here he is with Woody Allen, movie director and actor Woody Allen. There are several pictures of the two of them at various locations. Here in a meeting, Woody Allen, you can see there on the right, Jeffrey Epstein on the left. Let's go to another one. Here he is with former President Trump many years ago. And the president has said many times that, yes, he knew Jeffrey Epstein. He was big in Palm Beach. You know, the president has his Mar-a-Lago is there, his home and club. So he said, yeah, they knew a lot of the same people. They traveled in the same circles. But when he realized that something was not quite right with Jeffrey Epstein, he severed contact with him, all contact. Let's go to the next picture. Here he is, the president with several women. We don't know why their faces are blocked out, but they are. And obviously another old picture. Let's go ahead here. And that's it? Is that it? Okay, so Attorney Capozzolo, we're going to bring you in right now. The fact that all of these pictures have been dropped today, what does this say to you?
So from what I understand, they've received over 95,000 photos from the Epstein estate that they're going through now. And these are the first 19 that they've released, some of them redacted, I guess, to protect the identities of either victims or potential victims. From a pure legal perspective, I'm not sure that they advanced the ball too much in getting a understanding of any illicit activities, but they certainly establish some of which has been already known, but corroborate the fact that Epstein had contact with many high-level people, many connected to the Trump administration, and then other high-level people, including some Democrats like Bill Clinton and others.
And the thing of it is, too, Attorney Capozzolo, is that all of these people, they have confirmed that they had done business, either done business with him or talked about business with him, because he did travel in those circles. And like I said, he was into everything: health research, universities, making donations to universities, politics. So he would have traveled in those circles. It doesn't mean that any of those people in those pictures did anything wrong or had any knowledge of what Epstein was doing. He was a child sex trafficker.
Yes, and it's got to make that very clear that, again, none of these photos, I think, would advance any argument that any of these individuals participated in any illegal behavior. It just reestablishes a lot of what's already known, that Epstein had contact with many people, kind of in a jet set political community of people, and circulated, amongst these people in business and other, social gatherings.
And like you said, they've got 95,000 pictures, photos. They're going to be releasing even more of these. And he committed suicide in jail in Lower Manhattan, as I said earlier, back in 2019, while he was awaiting trial, Jeffrey Epstein, on sex trafficking charges. What do you think about all of the other pictures, the photos that will eventually be released? At least that's what the public is hoping.
So
what do you
I don't
think
know
that
what
would mean?
yeah, I don't know what's in them, but I can tell you from the Trump administration perspective, probably not happy to hear that there's 96,000 other photos, merely because every time they release these photos, it's going to get a breaking news coverage. It's going to remind the entirety of the United States that watches TV that he had connections to Epstein, and it's going to further cement in the people's minds that there's a strong connection between Epstein and Trump, whether they prove that Trump ever behaved in an appropriate way with Epstein or not. It's just a constant drumbeat. So from a political perspective, more than a legal, I think that the 96,000 photos is something that I'm sure the Trump administration is not happy to hear. They'd probably rather have them all released at once rather than 19 at a time over the next, 3 years.
That's right. The slow drip, drip, drip of this, and because it's been a controversy, obviously, and understandably from the very beginning. But the thing, though, too, the president has always said that he had severed ties with Jeffrey Epstein because he recognized when he became aware that he says that Epstein was actually poaching some of the younger girls that worked at his spa at Mar-a-Lago and the club there, that Jeffrey Epstein had been quote unquote stalking, and Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence because she was convicted of child sexual trafficking, that once he realized that he was poaching people and he got wind of what was going on, that he severed all ties with Jeffrey Epstein. He's been saying that from the very beginning.
Yes, and again, the photos potentially could either corroborate or dispute some of those contentions. If there are photos with Trump and Epstein after the time period when he says he severed ties with them, that would obviously contradict that version of events that the Trump administration has put forward. If there are no photos of Trump with Epstein after a certain date, then maybe that would tend to corroborate his position that at some point, for reasons that he's explained or other reasons, he severed ties with Epstein when he did.
And Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, now she has had a major fallout with the president. She is a staunch supporter of his, and she continues to support his policies. But she said she had to draw a line in the sand because she wanted all of the Epstein files released. And she said when she talked to the president about that he was very unhappy, her words, that he was very unhappy with her, and that he said, a lot of these pictures and a lot of the information in the files should not be released because they were, quote, going to hurt a lot of people. That's according to Marjorie Taylor Greene. What's your take on that?
So it's again, it just depends on what people mean by hurt. If people had inappropriate relations with Epstein, is that hurt or is that justice? It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. Many of the victims who are terrified of telling their story publicly because they're afraid of being sued by probably some of the more powerful people who Epstein related with, I think a lot of them want all this information out there because they want these issues addressed, because they don't feel like the justice system brought them justice by holding the people who abuse them accountable. So it's really the eye of the beholder as to what hurt means.
Absolutely. It depends on what your definition of it is. And as an attorney, if you represented any of these folks and these are high-powered people, high-profile people, if you were their attorney, what would you say to them? What should they be doing right now that these photos are being released? And there are going to be more. And again, it could be a slow drip over the next 3 years. So as an attorney, if you represented any of these people, what would you be telling them to do?
The best defense in this case may be a good offense, which is to get as good an understanding of what the relationship was and what evidence there might be in those records that might come out associating, that hypothetical client with Epstein. And then the best thing might be to just get out in front of it, lay out publicly what the relationship was, what you expect the evidence to be, and, decry Epstein for his behavior if you had no participation in that conduct. So if you were just someone who dealt with Epstein on a purely business level and weren't aware or ever visited the island, you want to get that out there right away so that as the evidence comes out and tends to corroborate that, then your client looks better. But the worst thing you could do is say nothing and have more and more evidence come out that you haven't gotten in front of. I think most people would try to get out in front of it.
It's interesting that you say that about saying nothing, because some folks have said nothing up to this point. So I'm wondering if they are going to end up of going public and issuing statements at this point.
I would expect a lot of people trying to get ahead of this now that they see that essentially they can no longer stop the avalanche. I think for a long time, to make an analogy, the snow kept getting higher and higher on the top of the mountain, and people were hoping it would never, the avalanche would never come. But it's clear that with all the political rumblings, with all the grassroots support, with all the politicians now coming forward, all this evidence is likely to come out. And it would really do your client a disservice to just, essentially put your head in a hole and hope that it's not going to come out, because it really does look like much of the evidence is going to become public. You even had, federal judges this week revisiting their position on the grand jury presentations and now releasing grand jury testimony. And that previously judges had ruled was not going to be released. But when they passed the new statute and the evidence is coming out, the judges said, well, we might as well release this too.
Now, as a legal expert, you've been doing this for most of your adult life. Is there anything else, any other insight that you can offer us about this particular issue?
At the end of the day, when they release the interview notes, that is really where I think the most explosive evidence will come from, when the agents interviewed the victims of the abuse and they identified individuals who sexually assaulted them. That's really where that's going to be maybe the last evidence comes out, but also the most powerful. I mean, photographs can tell a very damning story, but by all accounts, there aren't photographs of the actual abuse. There may be photographs of people with some of the victims, but not in the act of committing the crime. It's really going to be the statements of the witnesses and some of the, maybe even the staff on the island who observed these girls and what was going on, who had to know some of the things that were going on at the time. There are, I would point out, some somewhat graphic photos that were released that relate to sex toys and pretty disturbing things. Those things could be things that maybe the victims described having been assaulted with, and then if the photos show those items having been at the island, that would be strong corroboration that those things may have been used on them to perpetrate these sexual assaults.
Right, you're talking about some of those photos. One includes like this black rubber glove, sex toys, a bowl full of condoms.
Those are all things that in a sexual assault case, a victim can identify when they were interviewed years before these photos ever became public, and they described some of those same items, like that glove, which is very distinctive. If one of the victims described having been assaulted with that glove, that would be strong corroborating evidence of the fact that they experienced that assault.
And the thing of it is, too, like when the average person sits back and they're looking at those pictures, the 3 pictures that we just talked about with the sex toys and the rubber glove and the bowl of condoms, that can be very disturbing when you first see that.
Yes, and again, from the more political side than legal or public relations, those images being viewed at the same time by people who are also viewing what might otherwise be non-criminal, business meetings between Epstein and some of these people, it just makes a bad association. And again, like you were saying, a public crisis nightmare for many of these very high-profile people who I'm sure are going to go out there and continue to push their versions, which many have, that they had no participation in any of the activities Epstein was going to be, was prosecuted for.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sure we're going to be talking to you about this issue again in the future, because this is not going away. Like you said, this is going to end up being a slow drip, drip, drip. Attorney Anthony Capozzolo, thank you so much for your insight and your input here today. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Have a great weekend.
You too.